Hello, I'm Claire Barker, author of the Picklewitch and Jack series, published by Faber and illustrated so cleverly by Timu Yahani. There's currently two in the series. We have this one, Picklewitch and Jack, where we get to meet them, and we have this one, Picklewitch and Jack and the Cuckoo Cousin. And very excitingly, in March, the third in the series is coming out, and that's going to be called Picklewitch and Jack and the Sea Wizard's Secret. But first of all, before I tell you about those, I thought I might introduce you to my hut where I write. This is in my Devon garden. It's my writing hut, and I have all kinds of things in here. I have a sofa and I have a stove, and I also fill it with lots of interesting things that I find or I buy. So things like this. I've got a top hat here that I bought. It's about 100 years old. And here's a buzzard feather that I found in the woods when I was on a walk. Here is a set of keys. Bought those in an auction. Very old keys. I wonder what they would open. They might find their way into a story. I've got other things like nests up here that I found. Picklewitch's binoculars, of course. All kinds of things, really. There's this poster up here of butterflies and moths that gave me lots of ideas for the second in the Picklewitch series. So I take lots of ideas and I scribble them all down in books, and before you know it, they're a story. This book really came about because I really wanted to write something about a school trip, because I think they're such an important feature of school. And I know when I was younger, I used to really look forward to them, but at the same time I used to get a little bit homesick and feel a bit anxious about what to take and what to pack, and had I got the right things, and would I miss my mum, and all those sorts of things. So I wanted to write about that. I spent most of my childhood years by the sea, and so I'm very familiar with that sense of freedom and excitement that the sea creates, and the beach and all the things that you might find on it. And so I went on a trip to Lyme Regis one day, and I went to the museum and I learned all about Mary Anning, and I found a fossil. Look at this. Do you like my fossil? I found that. I'm very pleased with it. And my husband bought me a fossil hammer, and that was very exciting. And then I was having a picnic, and I found that I was sitting somewhere rather unusual, and there were all these big ammonite fossils around me, and I learned it was called the ammonite pavement, and that I was surrounded by these incredible fossils. And I thought, I have to write about this. How could I write about this? What would Picklewitch and Jack think about this place? And before you knew it, I had the Sea Wizard's Secret. I think I'm very interested in writing about unusual friendships. Just because somebody is different to us doesn't mean that they won't make a very good friend. Just because their opinions are different doesn't mean that you won't get on. In fact, sometimes those friends are the most fun because they are different. And Picklewitch and Jack are very different. Jack is very sensible. He won Most Sensible Boy 3 years running at his last school. He's very tidy. He really likes rules and being smart. In fact, he's good at everything. He's really clever. So clever, he's won a scholarship to St Immaculate School for the Gifted. But here he hopes this will be the place where he'll find a proper friend, just like him, somebody logical and sensible and well-behaved. But on the day that they move into their new house, he doesn't know that he is being watched. He is being watched by a grubby, naughty, cake-mad little witch that lives in the end of his new garden in a tree. She's only ever had the birds for company, but as soon as she claps eyes on Jack, she's certain that they should be best friends. Soon she's sitting next to him at school, being more popular than Pudding and generally making his life a nightmare, making up rude words, causing classroom chaos and not behaving. Jack tries all sorts of things to get rid of her, to make room for a more appropriate friend, but she sticks to him like superglue. That one day, when Jack finds himself in real trouble with bullies, it's Picklewitch that leaps to the rescue. And in this story, Jack really learns 3 things. 1 is he's not as clever as he thinks he is. 2, it's good to be different. And 3, friends can be found in the most unlikely places. In the next book in the series, it's springtime, and a letter arrives in the garden addressed to Picklewitch, and it's from her long-lost cousin Archie Cuckoo, letting her know that he is coming for a visit. Now, Jack's worried that 2 witches is bound to be double trouble, but he's pleasantly surprised because on the surface, Archie seems like the perfect friend. He's tidy, he's polite, he's clever, he doesn't use magical language, which Jack approves of, and really he puts Picklewitch to shame. But Archie Cuckoo is not at all what he seems, and it takes real bravery from Picklewitch to save the day. Another thing I find very interesting is the idea of magic being around us in the everyday, but because we don't think it's possible, we don't see it. And there's a piece in Cuckoo Cousin here which hopefully sums up what I mean. Before Jack and his mum had moved in, Rookery Heights had lain empty for years, its large rambling garden wild and overgrown. Every day strangers had walked by on their way to work, past the boarded-up windows, past its creaking iron gate. No one had any inkling that a little witch was living behind its high garden walls, making magic and playing with the birds. Sometimes Picklewitch watched the boxes from the high branches of her walnut tree. If these house dwellers had looked up from their phones and newspapers, they might have caught a glimpse of a lone figure in a pointed hat, peering down at them through a pair of cracked binoculars. But people were often too busy to notice the really important things, so her existence stayed as secret as a nut in its shell. The books are full of nature magic, nature facts as well, because I love non-fiction nature books. But there's all sorts of strange and interesting words like fudge nut and fopdoodle. I think here, is it here? Yeah, here, look. There we go. Fudge nut. One of Picklewitch's words, one of her calling cards, undoubtedly. There's lots of other things in here as well, just the leaf. There's things like the binoculars, which hopefully will be a clue to what's happening in the 3rd book in the series. Also other things here like, what have we got? We've got buckets, and we've got shells, and we've got fishing nets. All as clues as to what's going to happen in the 3rd book in the series. Ooh. In this book, Picklewitch and Jack go on a school trip. Picklewitch has never been on holiday before. She's never built a sand castle. She's never wore a swimming costume. She's never played in a rock pool. But all that is about to change. One hot summer's day, Professor Bright reveals the exciting news to the class that they have all been invited to Draconis Hall in Dorset, clifftop home of the famous fossil expert and ex-St Immaculate's pupil, Dr Ferenzi Sharptooth. Not only this, there is a prize for the best fossil find, a top-of-the-range Bone Star hammer. A mad keen collector of fossils and Dr Sharptooth's #1 fan, Jack is desperate to win it. He hopes Picklewitch will help, but no such luck. After she spots a rare sea wizard wandering along the shoreline, she's only got one thing on her mind: an invitation to tea and cake in the sea wizard's cave. Fed up and having no luck amongst the rocks, Jack is sure his quest is doomed, until Picklewitch, in a twist in the tale, leads him to the rarest hidden treasure of all. So I'm going to read you a chapter from Picklewitch and Jack and the Sea Wizard's Secret, and this is chapter 4, and this is called Bedward to the Greenwood, and it's that bit where, I don't know if you've been on a school trip and you know, and so when you stay in a dormitory, and everybody has to get their bed and put their cases away, and it's, you know, it's quite an important moment, and so that's what this chapter is about. Picklewitch having to come to terms with being on holiday. After dinner, everyone went to the dormitories to unpack. There was much squabbling over who should get the top bunks. Jack managed to nab a bed next to the window so that Picklewitch would have the best view of the garden. He lay down on the bottom bunk while Picklewitch bounced up and down on the mattress above him, the bed springs squeaking. "This nest is most peculiar, even for a boxy. I don't like it," she says, peering over the edge and hanging upside down like a bat. "It's called a bunk bed," whispered Jack. "Don't be so ungrateful and keep your voice down. You're not even supposed to be in the boys' dorm." "Bunker's bed more like. Very odd," Picklewitch said, swinging from side to side. "That's not the only weird thing either. Everything here is strange and wrong. I feels it in my bones. I miss my tree and the birds and the wind. I wants to go home." Jack smiled. "But we've only just arrived, Picklewitch. Don't worry. You're just a bit homesick, that's all. This is what happens on holiday. You have to get used to sleeping in different places, with different smells and sounds. Soon it will feel perfectly normal. Have you unpacked yet?" Picklewitch reached down for her rucksack and tipped it upside down like a bin. A jumble of rubbish fell out with a clatter, empty yoghurt pots and cake wrappers, her grim, some walnuts, and her cracked binoculars. "As you can see," she said, "the birds have thought of everything." Loud footsteps rang out over the wooden floorboards as Victoria appeared in the doorway. "Ah, Picklewitch, there you are." "Here we go," sighed Jack. "You do know you're not allowed to sleep in here with Jack, don't you?" said Victoria, marching towards them. "You have to sleep with the girls at the end of the corridor. This is a dormitory for boys. You," she looked Picklewitch up and down with some distaste, "may be many things, but you are not a boy." Picklewitch somersaulted down onto the floor, her boots landing on the wooden boards with a thud. "You should be more careful," she whispered in menacing tones, standing nose to nose with Victoria, "because you don't know what I is." Victoria's mouth flapped like a flip-top bin. She looked like she was about to say something, but then thought better of it. Instead, she span on her shiny heel and marched back out of the dormitory. "Stupid bossy baker. No one tells me what to do. I'll sleep where I like," muttered Picklewitch, shoving everything back into her rucksack. "Which is why I'm not sleeping in this horrible old house like some bloomin' boxy, bunker's bed or not." She took her own pulse and felt her forehead. Her eyes widened in dismay. "Oh no, I knew it. I've gone and caught a bad case of homesickness." "But," protested Jack weakly, we all have to sleep inside. It's the rules." A small flock of yellow-eyed seagulls had lined up on the windowsill, slapping their feet and pecking at the glass. Rat-a-tat-tat. Picklewitch peered over their bobbing heads down into the twilight of the garden. All right, I'm coming. Time to roost." She opened the sash window and grabbed a vine of ivy. "Bedward to the greenwood," she cried, swooping out into the night. Once upon a time this would have caused Jack to worry, but not now. Picklewitch is as wild as a blackbird, he thought, as he pulled on his NASA pyjamas and brushed his teeth, 94 brushes down, 94 brushes up. "I'll bet the garden here is large and old, with plenty of trees. She'll simply find a comfy mossy branch to sleep on and a baby bat to cuddle up to. She'll be bossing the birds about by breakfast." Jack put his toothbrush away and zipped up his wash bag. He climbed into the bottom bunk and yawned, just as Professor Bright popped his head around the door. "Everybody found a bunk and unpacked?" he asked, looking at the rows of heads. "Excellent. Exciting day tomorrow. Fossils and fun galore. You'll need a good night's sleep. Good night, boys. Lights out." Then, with the flick of a switch, the room was suddenly dark. "Good night, sir," the boys chorused. As the sound of footsteps disappeared down the corridor, a dozen torches clicked on as everyone pulled out their secret bedtime reading. Jack took out a beloved copy of Fabulous Fossils by Dr. Forensic Sharptooth from underneath his pillow. He clicked on his own torch and settled back on his pillow. Just as he was getting stuck into the well-thumbed chapter on ichthyosaurs, his thoughts momentarily strayed back to Picklewitch. He hoped she was all right out there in a strange new garden. He hoped she would enjoy finding fossils with him tomorrow. He hoped she wouldn't feel lonely. But mostly he just hoped that the fresh sea air would wear her out. When I was little, I used to wander along the shoreline looking for messages in bottles. I really hoped that I might stumble across some special message from a sailor somewhere, or somebody lost at sea, or something exciting. I never really did find one. But in Picklewitch and the Sea Wizard's Secret, Jack does find a message in the bottle, and it helps them find their way to Scowling Margaret, the sea wizard herself, to her cave, and in a thing called a treasure triangle. Now, you don't have to make a treasure triangle, but what I would like you to do, your writing task is to write a message in a bottle. I want you to write a letter from somebody who might be stuck on a desert island, they might be shipwrecked, they might be on the other side of the world. This letter might be 10 years old, it might be 100 years old, it might be 500 years old, and you find it. So that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to make a letter. I want you to think of a character, where they live, how they got there, and what their message is. And then I want you to roll it up, and I want you to pop it in a bottle.